I always thought choosing would be hard, but being chosen feels even more special. Tell me, which one do you feel connected to?
At this stage in life, we understand what truly matters, not the noise, not the rush, not the things that once demanded so much of our attention. What matters now is what stays. You've lived long enough to know the difference between what is loud and what is meaningful, between what passes through your life and what quietly remains. And as you sit here watching, you may recognize this feeling, that gentle pull in your chest, the one that arrives without warning, the one that says, "This feels familiar," because life by now has taught you something important. You've known beginnings, you've known endings, you've known love that arrived suddenly, and love that stayed long after the excitement faded. And perhaps, somewhere along the way, you've learned that the deepest connections are often the quietest ones. In this room, nothing is rushed. No one is performing. No one is asking for more than a moment of attention, just a few chairs, a few people, and a calm presence moving gently between them. If you look closely, you'll notice something else too. No one here is trying to impress anyone. The people sitting here aren't here for spectacle. They're here because they understand patience, because they've learned how to wait, because they know that the most meaningful choices are rarely made in a hurry. And as the dog walks slowly down the aisle, you might notice how your own breathing changes, how your shoulders relax just a little, how something inside you softens. That's not an accident, that's recognition, because companionship, real companionship, doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't rush forward. It simply shows up and stays. You may have felt this kind of presence before, in a partner who sat beside you through long evenings, in a friend who didn't need many words, in the comfort of knowing someone was there, even in silence. And maybe, if you're honest, you've missed that feeling, not the excitement of something new, but the steadiness of something familiar. At this stage in life, we don't need constant motion. We don't need chaos or change for the sake of change. What we long for is something gentler, something loyal, something patient, something that understands quiet. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. Because adoption isn't about fixing something that's broken. It's about recognizing something that's already whole. The people in this room aren't searching for perfection. They aren't looking for youth or speed or endless energy. They're looking for connection, the kind that fits naturally into the life they've built, the kind that understands routines, the kind that finds joy in small moments, a shared walk, a quiet morning, a presence that greets you at the door, not because it has to, but because it wants to. As you watch, you may notice subtle movements from the people seated here. A hand resting on a knee, a slight lean forward, a quiet smile that appears without effort. These are not reactions of surprise. They are reactions of recognition, because by now, you know what it feels like when something simply makes sense. And perhaps this video is asking you something gently, without pressure. Not, "Are you ready to start over?" but rather, "Are you open to continuing? Continuing the life you already understand, continuing the rhythm you've grown comfortable with, continuing with a companion who doesn't ask you to change who you are, someone who fits beside you, not ahead of you, someone who walks at your pace, someone who understands that togetherness doesn't need constant activity, only presence. If you've ever felt that quiet space beside you at the end of the day, if you've ever noticed the silence feeling just a little heavier than it used to, if you've ever thought it would be nice to share this moment with someone, then you already understand what this is about. This isn't about filling time. It's about sharing it. And as this moment continues to unfold, there's no urgency, no demand, just an invitation, one that respects where you are and everything you've lived through to get here. Because adoption at this stage in life isn't about starting over. It's about continuing together. At this stage in life, time feels different. It no longer rushes past unnoticed. You feel it now. You notice the hours, the mornings, the evenings that arrive quietly and stay longer than they used to. And with that awareness comes something else, an understanding that life isn't measured by how full the calendar is, but by how full the moments feel. The people in this room understand that. You can see it in the way they sit, comfortable, unhurried, not waiting for the next big thing, just present with what's happening right now. That's what experience teaches you. You learn that the best moments are rarely planned. They arrive slowly, naturally, and when they do, you recognize them not with excitement, but with calm. The dog moving gently between the rows isn't trying to entertain. It isn't rushing toward anyone. It's simply being attentive, curious, calm. And that calm presence speaks volumes, because by now, you know that companionship isn't about constant interaction. It's about shared rhythm. Walking together without needing conversation, sitting together without needing explanation, knowing someone is there even when nothing is happening. If you've ever shared a home for years with someone, you know this feeling well. The comfort of routine, the quiet understanding, the way two lives settle into each other over time. And maybe, at some point, that rhythm changed. Life does that. Children grow up. Careers slow down. People you loved may no longer be sitting beside you. No one prepares you for how quiet those changes can be. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a gradual shift, until one day you notice the silence more than you used to. And it's in those quiet spaces that companionship matters most. Not companionship that demands effort, not companionship that needs to be managed or explained, but the kind that simply exists. The kind that follows you from room to room, the kind that waits patiently, the kind that understands that being close doesn't always mean being active. As the dog pauses near one of the seated adults, you might notice how natural the interaction feels. No hesitation, no uncertainty, just a shared moment, a gentle lean, a soft touch, a presence that doesn't rush away. This is what many people discover later in life, that the deepest connections aren't built on excitement, but on steadiness, on showing up, on staying, on understanding that some days are quiet, and that's perfectly okay. You may recognize yourself in the people watching, the way they observe carefully, the way they don't reach out immediately, but wait, the way their smiles are subtle, not loud or performative. That's not distance, that's discernment. Because by now, you've learned how to choose. You've learned how to listen to your instincts. You know when something feels right, not because it's thrilling, but because it fits. Adoption at this stage isn't about filling a void. It's about honoring the life you already have. It's about finding companionship that respects your pace, that understands your routines, that doesn't need constant entertainment to feel content. Someone to share the simple things with. Morning light through the window, a familiar walk down the same street, the comfort of knowing that when the day ends, you're not entirely alone in it. And perhaps this video isn't asking you to imagine a different life. Perhaps it's asking you to imagine the same life, just shared. Shared in quiet ways. Shared without pressure, shared with someone who finds comfort in your presence, just as you find comfort in theirs. The people here aren't choosing out of impulse. They're choosing with intention. Because later in life, choices become more thoughtful, more meaningful, less about what's expected and more about what feels right. And that's what makes this moment powerful. Not the act itself, but the understanding behind it. That companionship doesn't have to be complicated. That loyalty doesn't need to be earned through effort. That sometimes the most profound relationships begin not with excitement, but with calm. As you continue watching, you may feel something settling in you. A quiet agreement. A sense of recognition. Because deep down, you already know this truth. The best chapters of life aren't always the loudest. Sometimes they're the most peaceful. And sometimes continuing doesn't mean moving forward alone. There is a kind of loyalty that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't need reassurance. It simply exists, steady, patient, and constant. By now, you know the difference between loyalty that is promised and loyalty that is proven over time. You've lived long enough to see both, and that's why this moment matters, because the bond forming here doesn't rely on words. There are no explanations needed, no expectations laid out. Just a quiet understanding between two lives that have both known change. The dog pauses, looks up, waits. That waiting says more than excitement ever could. It says, I'm here. It says, I'm not going anywhere. It says, take your time. And perhaps, without realizing it, that's exactly what you've been asking life for lately. Time to move at your own pace. Time to breathe. Time to experience connection without urgency. The people seated here aren't reaching out quickly. They're allowing the moment to unfold. That patience comes from experience, from knowing that the most meaningful relationships aren't rushed. You might notice the way a hand rests gently, not grasping, not pulling. The way the dog leans in, not because it's told to, but because it chooses to. That's trust. Trust built not on training or commands, but on presence. And presence is something you understand deeply now. You understand that being there matters more than being impressive. That consistency matters more than excitement. That loyalty is shown in small, repeated moments, not grand gestures. If you've ever had someone sit beside you during a difficult time without trying to fix anything, you know this feeling, that quiet comfort, that shared silence, that understanding that nothing needs to be said. This bond feels like that. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just right. And for many people at this stage in life, that kind of connection is exactly what feels missing, not because they lack people, but because they lack presence. The kind of presence that follows you through the house. The kind that notices when you pause. The kind that stays close without needing to be entertained. As the dog settles beside one of the adults, you may notice how natural it feels, like something that was always meant to be there. And perhaps you imagine what that would feel like in your own life. A quiet morning with someone waiting nearby. An evening where silence doesn't feel empty. A companion who doesn't judge your pace or your routines. Someone who adapts to you rather than asking you to adapt to them. That's loyalty. And loyalty at this stage means something different than it once did. It's no longer about obligation. It's about choice. Choosing to stay. Choosing to show up. Choosing to be present, even on the quiet days. The people in this room aren't making impulsive decisions. They're making thoughtful ones. Decisions shaped by years of living, loving, losing, and learning. They know what they're capable of offering. Time, care, consistency. And in return, they're not asking for much. Just companionship. Just loyalty. Just a calm presence that understands. As you watch, you might notice a shift, not in the room, but in yourself. A softening. A sense of familiarity. A quiet thought forming. This feels right, not because it's new, but because it's honest. Adoption in this moment isn't about rescue in the dramatic sense. It's about mutual choice. Two lives meeting where they are. Two beings offering what they can. Two companions finding comfort in each other's presence. And maybe that's what makes it so powerful. There's no promise of excitement, no guarantee of perfection. Just the assurance of togetherness, the kind that grows stronger with time, the kind that doesn't fade when things slow down. the kind that remains. If you've ever wished for someone who understands the value of quiet, if you've ever longed for a presence that stays without asking for more, if you've ever felt ready to share the next chapter gently, then you already understand this. Bond, because loyalty isn't about starting something new. It's about choosing to continue side by side. There comes a point in life when clarity replaces urgency. When we stop asking what's next and start asking what feels right. At this stage, you've earned that clarity. You've lived through enough chapters to recognize when something belongs in your life, not because it's exciting, but because it feels steady, familiar, honest. That's what this moment represents. Not a decision made in haste, not a leap into the unknown, but a quiet step forward, taken with understanding. As the room remains calm, as the movements stay gentle, there's no pressure here. No one is being rushed. No one is being persuaded. This isn't about convincing. It's about recognizing. Recognizing that companionship doesn't have to change your life to matter. Sometimes it simply fits into it. Into the mornings that begin slowly, into the afternoons filled with routine, into the evenings that settle in without much noise. A presence that doesn't ask you to be anyone other than who you already are. Because by now, you know yourself, you know your pace, you know your limits, you know what brings you comfort, and you also know that life is better when it's shared, not loudly, not dramatically, but gently. The people in this room understand that. They aren't looking for a distraction. They aren't filling time. They are choosing companionship that complements the life they've already built. A life shaped by experience, by patience, by resilience. And maybe, as you watch, you're not imagining a future filled with change. Maybe you're imagining a future filled with continuity. The same walks, just shared. The same quiet moments, just accompanied. The same life with someone beside you. Someone who doesn't need explanations. Someone who doesn't expect perfection. Someone who finds comfort simply being near. That's the beauty of adoption at this stage in life. It's not about reinvention. It's about alignment. Two lives meeting in the middle. Two journeys slowing down together. Two companions finding ease and shared presence. You've already done the hard parts of life. You've navigated change. You've carried responsibility. You've endured loss and celebrated joy. Now, what remains is something softer. Connection, comfort, continuity, and perhaps the most reassuring part of all is this. There's no rush. This choice waits patiently, just like the companionship it offers. It respects your timing. It honors your experience. It understands that meaningful decisions are made quietly. If you choose to open your life to this kind of companionship, it won't demand more than you can give. It will walk at your pace. Rest when you rest. Stay when things are quiet. And in return, it offers something deeply human. Presence. Not just on the good days, but on the ordinary ones. The slow ones. The quiet ones, because those are the days that matter most. Now, adoption isn't about starting over. It isn't about filling space. It's about continuing thoughtfully, gently, together, continuing the life you've already shaped, continuing the rhythm you understand, continuing with someone who chooses you, simply because you're there. And as this moment settles, there's nothing left to explain. Only something to feel, a calm understanding, a quiet possibility, a sense that maybe, just maybe, the next chapter doesn't need to be written alone. Sometimes, the most meaningful journeys don't begin with excitement, they begin with calm, and they continue together.